Hi, everybody. Back again. Been a busy couple weeks, but finally getting around to doing some things here. And I think one of the most important and probably the easiest things that you can do to make sure that you're having a good sound for any event, but certainly with rodeo. And this is something that I did not understand when I was younger, really, probably until a couple years ago. Gain staging, making sure that you have a good gain structure all the way through your system can really make sure that things are clean and also able to be heard well. So, first of all, what is gain? If you look up videos and things about people talking about this on the internet, people get really fired up sometimes about just terminology. Specifically, what does it mean? And usually, the biggest argument people will have is that they just equate gain with volume. But I'm going to do my best to use correct terminology throughout this video. I'm probably going to slip up at some point, so don't get super upset. But when we're talking about gain, we're going to try to ignore the output. We're going to ignore the actual sound that you're hearing that is coming out of a speaker. We're talking about gain. We're talking about an electrical signal that is coming from whatever your input may be, whether it is a microphone, whether it is a computer, whether it is your Omnisport or FarmTech console that's giving you your horn, your buzzer for your rodeo, whatever it is, it's sending an electrical signal, which is going to ultimately be converted to an audio signal that you're going to be able to hear when it comes out of the speakers. But whenever we're talking about gain, we're talking about the amplitude, basically, of that signal. So in physics, you're talking about a sound wave, which is got two main measurable components: your frequency, which is how many waves are compressed into a specific area. So, higher frequencies, we're talking about higher notes when you're hearing people talk. So, just higher frequencies are naturally just higher sounding things, like your soprano when you're talking about choir type things, and then your lower frequencies being bass notes, things like that. And then amplitude being how high are those peaks, how low are those troughs. So right here, I've kind of written out a couple different things. So we're just talking about a basic wave, and I've kind of created some bounds for us here, top and bottom. So like this wave would be, okay if it was coming into a signal. But with gain, if we turn it up, we can take that wave, increase the amplitude to where it is now, filling up a little bit more of that space where it can be usable, and give you a little bit better of a sound quality. And also make sure that when you are ultimately putting that signal out, it is able to compete with the other things that you have going on, and you can get much more of a full signal. And there's also some more benefits when we talk about digital gain here in a minute. But the danger is, let's say that you set up somewhere and you have your gain set too high, and you plug in a different microphone, you plug in a different source, and all of a sudden you have what looks like this right here, which is that wave that is exceeding the bounds that we have set. So you're getting what's called a square wave, meaning you're not getting the full sound, and this is what sounds bad. Sounds crunchy, sounds grindy, overmodulated, a lot of different terms. But that's what we want to avoid. So we want to try to find that sweet spot in the middle where we're getting the most out of the wave without pushing it too far, and then also avoiding having too small of a wave where we're not really getting a whole lot of a signal. So first thing we're going to talk about is our analog board here. So this was actually the board I used until just a couple years ago. For those of you that are still using an analog board, excellent. You can do a lot of stuff with an analog board. You don't have to be using digital, just because a lot of people are now. Certainly don't feel any pressure. You can get in trouble with digital if you don't know what you're doing. If you have aspirations of doing bigger and better things, you need more outputs. You need more freedom of being able to create different mixes that need to go different places. Yes, digital mixers can certainly help you out there, but make sure you're taking the time to figure out how to use it so that you're not getting in the middle of a show and possibly getting in a situation where you're not understanding what's going on, because it can really get you in trouble. But a lot of stuff that you can do right here. So Yamaha is what I have here, and then over here I have DM3. So we'll talk about digital here in a moment. But first things first, we'll talk about our analog mixer. So if you come to the channel strip here, so we've got plugged into channel 2, just have a SE microphone here. And we go to the very top of that strip, and this first knob right here is your gain. So I've got it turned all the way down, which is labeled as either -6 or +20, depending on whether or not you have that pad there. And so I've got everything turned down, everything turned off, and right here at the bottom is labeled PFL. If I select that, what that stands for is pre-fade listen or pre-fader level. See that we've now got this blinking over here. So without having anything turned on in the system, we can actually check what kind of a signal we're getting coming in on our meter right here. So turning on the microphone, again, we've got everything turned down. I'm talking in just a fairly normal voice right here, occasionally kind of getting up to that -20 right there. And so this would be a signal that if you're doing a sound check and your announcer, your clown, is talking like this, and you're only getting up to -20, you're going to be in trouble if you're trying to push everything to a good level on your output. You can have this right here and ultimately push your fader all the way up, have this fader all the way up, and you're probably not ever really going to get this to a level that you want it to be ultimately when you do get to that output portion. So you come over here, and while talking, we can kind of keep an eye on this over here with an analog mixer. We want to try to get up to that 0 to that unity marker. So I just come over here, still talking. We'll watch the meter here, slowly turning the knob to the right, still talking in the same volume, and slowly we're getting an increase there. So finally we're getting right up about to that 0. We're just kind of tickling the 0 right there. That's where we want to be. So now we've got a good input on our gain. We can turn off the PFL, and we can turn on our channel, turn on our main channel there and the output. And then now what we're seeing is the actual after fader level on this right here. And so if I just turn the channel down, we're just kind of watching so we can see that fader slowly, or the meter slowly changing. And it's pretty much as simple as that. Now, the tricky thing is, if you're in the middle of a sound check and you've got something that looks like this, and your announcer, your clown, whatever, is talking in this type of voice, and then all of a sudden you get to the rodeo, people get excited, they run out there and they start going, "Hey everybody, how are you doing?" You see, we kind of start to get up to that peak. That's what we really want to avoid. So ideally in your sound check, you want to try to get your announcer and your clown to be speaking in the volume, or at least close to the volume, with their voice, the same inflection, trying to keep the same distance of the microphone from their mouth. You know, if they're kind of sound checking right here and then all of a sudden the rodeo starts and they're eating the microphone, that's going to make a big difference. So consistency there is really going to help you. And you might need to leave yourself a little bit of a pad there at the bottom. Maybe keep that gain just a little bit lower, just kind of knowing once you get to know certain people that they are possibly going to change once they get to the rodeo. So pretty much that's where we are on the analog system. Fairly simple there. Again, the goal is to try to have a good enough level to where your output signal is going to ultimately be loud enough, and you're trying to avoid getting up to that peak to where it's going to be just a nasty sound. Because if you, again, let's turn on our pre-fader level here, and let's say that we turn this guy all the way up, and I'm still talking in the same volume right here, and you can see that we are just consistently getting up close to that peak. If you come in here and get excited and it already looks like that and it sounds bad just on this channel, even if you're turning this down, you're not really going to have a good chance of having a good sound all night long. You're just kind of screwed from the start. So starting with that gain is really going to help you out. So let's kind of get it dialed back in, bring it down a little more. Okay, and we're about right there. So next thing we're going to do What I have set up here is on my DM3, I pulled up my last scene from Monte Vista, Colorado, and I've got channel 6 set up as a talkback microphone for myself to be able to talk to announcers, clowns, whenever they're wearing in-ear monitors. And I have it set up to where I just have this specific microphone plugged directly into the back of here. So the gain is set at positive 32. What we're going to do is, instead of plugging this microphone directly into the back here, we're going to kind of simulate a different scenario, which is having an input from a different source other than just a microphone. So say you're working with a video crew, or you're taking an input from a computer, or you've got some weird different setup where there's a mixer somewhere that is sending you a signal. This is kind of how you would work through it. So right now we've got gain set on this as if we were outputting directly to whatever our speaker system is going to be, whether we're going to amps and then to speakers or directly to speakers. We've got this set up to where we want it to be. Now, if I talk into this and we've got this output going directly to the DM3, when you come to your specific channel, you've got it selected. Top left corner right here, you have your gain page basically, and Yamaha in their latest software for DM3, DM7, they have this fun little cheater for you, which is supposed to turn green right there in the center when you are about ideal of what you want to be. But let's pretend for a second that we're using something else that does not have this fun little Yamaha proprietary cheater. You've got your same little meter that we had on the analog mixer right here. However, you might notice that this only goes up to 0, as opposed to analog mixer, we're going to 0, then we're going on up to positive 3, positive 6, positive 10 before we get to peaking. Here, when you get to 0, you're peaking. So different scale. So ideally with a digital mixer, if you just have a meter like this, you want to get to that negative 18, and you can kind of see here that the color changes from green to yellow right about negative 18. And I'm holding the microphone about 2 feet away from my face right now, and we're already slightly going above that. So again, I already had this gain set for a different scenario where I have this microphone plugged directly into the back of the DM3. And instead, since we're running out of this mixer, then we have a different scenario. So this is one of those things that you're going to want to pay attention to when you're having changes in between shows, in between nights, things like that. If I hold this microphone directly up to my mouth, we're getting the red on our cheater. We're getting all the way up to 0, which means that we are peaking, and that's going to be bad. So similar here on the DM3, you just kind of have to have your gain up here in the top corner selected, and then use this fun little knob right here, and it will slowly turn it down. And so we get back to about positive 6 right there. And so we're still a little hot if I hold it directly up to my mouth. So we drop on down and we're at 0, and we are still getting up to negative 9, even negative 6 if I'm kind of talking a little bit heavier there. So what do we do? With the DM3, I got a positive 1. Let's go to 0 here. Okay, so now we're at 0. So we're still getting up to negative 9. What do you do in this situation? The DM3, you can't go to a negative gain. Other mixing consoles you can. Ogden, Utah last week goes on a QL1. You can go into the negative on your gain there. But since we can't do that here, if I'm already above negative 12, getting to negative 9, possibly even negative 6, and I'm talking in a normal volume, and I know that whoever is going to come out there, I might get excited, when things are going on. This is not going to be a great scenario because I don't have any more room to bring my gain down. In this situation, say that this signal is coming from Video World or your computer if you have it plugged in that way. We're going to come back over here, and we want to ultimately bring down our send to this board from this board. So you just tell whoever you're working with, hey, I need less from you, whether they can adjust the gain on their end of that specific channel or they can adjust their output to you. you just ask them to bring that down. So even though it may look kind of weird over here, we're only getting up to -10. Now over here, I'm getting up to about -24. And that actually works out a little bit better. We want to be below that -18, because now what I can do is come here, turn that gain back up slowly. We get to about +11, and now I'm just kind of getting right to that green, getting right to that -18, slightly above it. Now I have room, if I need to go up or down. If for some reason something changes from this output, and if it's a video situation and it's one of those where somebody from the committee runs up there and hands them a flash drive and said, hey, I got this video I forgot I was supposed to give you, and it's 15 minutes before the rodeo, they get it loaded and you don't have a chance to check your level before you get to your rodeo, and you're like, well, we're just gonna have to kind of wing it. That happens. If you leave yourself room to go up or down, you're safe. If you only have room to go up and it's a super hot signal, then again, you're going to kind of be screwed there from the beginning. So that's again the basics here. If you're using something like a M32 or X32, I believe, like top left-hand corner, they've got a gain knob there, and it's actually got a meter around the outside of it where you can see it going up to that -18. -18 is going to be your magic number. When we're talking about gain with digital as well, going back to what I was talking about earlier, one important thing to note is that your digital signal going out, the gain is directly related to the bit rate of that signal. So basically what that means is that your signal is going to be a higher digital quality if you have the gain set correctly. If you have it way too low, then it's going to be a much lower bit rate, which is going to be a less good quality signal going out. And also to note, with both analog and digital, if you're looking at your fader, you'll notice that towards the bottom, these numbers are a lot closer together than what they are at the top. So you've got a 5 dB change up here as opposed to a 10 dB change in a much smaller space down here. So if you have your gain set correctly, that allows you to have that fader up a little bit higher, where when you want to make more minuscule sensitive type adjustments, you're able to just move it slowly like this, and you can possibly adjust half a dB, 1 dB, 2 dB is necessary, as opposed to if things are not appropriate, maybe you've got that gain up a little bit too high and you have to have that fader down low. If you're moving like this, I mean, a minuscule adjustment at the bottom of your fader here is going to be a much more dramatic change in the ultimate output, which can, again, really kind of mess with the way things ultimately sound when they come out, and make things sound possibly more jerky, especially if it's on your music channel. If you're trying to make adjustments and you want it to sound nice and smooth, like when you're coming in and coming out with music, having it much lower down here, that is really going to be a lot harder to make sound good, smooth, even than it is if you have things set up a little bit higher here. And again, all of that is based upon gain.